Specialty Stories, session number 41. Whether you're a pre-med or a medical student, you've answered the calling to become a physician. Soon you'll have to start deciding what type of medicine you'll want to practice. We're here to tell you the stories of specialists from every field to give you the information you need to make sure you make the most informed decision possible when it comes to choosing your specialty. Welcome to Specialty Stories. My name is Dr. Ryan Gray, your host here every week. If you're a pre-med student, I highly recommend you go check out our other podcasts like the Pre-Med Years, the MCAT podcast, or even Old Pre-Meds podcast for helping you on your journey to medical school. If you're already in medical school, thank you for joining me here today. We have a great episode with a pediatric neurologist, a general pediatric neurologist. Several weeks ago, we had a pediatric neurologist who specialized in headache medicine, but now we have Dr. Denia Ramirez, who has been out in practice now for 5.5 years after her residency in pediatric neurology. Now, she's kind of in a combo academic and community setting at the University of Tennessee Medical Center, and she's going to talk all about her specialty. We start, as always, by talking about when Dr. Ramirez first became interested in pediatric neurology.
When I did my residency in Costa Rica in pediatrics, I started to get the sense that neurodevelopment and neurology were the things that amazed me the most, is kind of sort of see how a child gains milestones, how things change, how they can shift from being some, little person that is pretty happy and content with anybody when you're 2 or 3 months old to somebody who is completely against anybody who's a stranger 8 or 9 months old. Those are all things that mesmerize me. My father-in-law is a neurologist, then around that time is when I met my husband, and so I got to see more of what the neurology was, not only inside but outside, and that's what sparked the interest in moving forward and doing neurology.
While you were doing your residency in pediatrics, were there any other subspecialties that piqued your interest?
Yeah. Emergency medicine, Peds ED was the other thing that I really liked. I realized that the demands and the amount of time that I was going to be out of home if I decided to go that route was probably too much for me if I wanted to try to keep a family and do other things as well. So yes, ED was the other thing that I really liked.
What traits do you think lead to being a good pediatric neurologist?
Well, I think that you have to like kids. That's the first thing. I think that you need to be, and holds true for neurologists as well. So it's not only for peds, but also for adult neurology. You have to know your neuroanatomy, know your localization well, and learn the process in which we think or we are taught to think to try to reach a diagnosis. More often than not, you're going to hear people who say, you got to be really smart to do this or that subspecialty. I think that you have to like it, you have to enjoy it, you have to be dedicated, but that holds true for any single subspecialty that you get yourself into. For me, one of the most wonderful things is the fact that when I'm in clinic, I'm essentially being paid to play with kids. I love what I do. I love talking to kids. I love talking to parents. I love to work with them, and that makes my job much easier.
What types of diseases and pathologies are you seeing on a day-to-day basis?
Well, you see almost everything that, we will see. So the subspecialties within child neurology have been a relatively new thing. So do I get to see everything that my other peers see? yes, you see kids with epilepsy, and you see the whole spectrum of those kids, the ones who come every 6 months and they're doing great, and you're just hoping that if they're going to outgrow that you walk them through the process and help them until they outgrow their epilepsy, to the kids who have severe brain lesions or have some of the genetic epilepsies or have other reasons why they developed epilepsy, and those are going to be long-term patients for you. You see the kids with headaches. You see a lot of very normal kids who had one or two febrile seizures, and parents are understandably worried and concerned about what that means. You see kids with developmental delay, with learning problems, kids who are struggling in school. And again, everybody wants to make sure that they're not missing something that is bigger. You see kids with neurodegenerative diseases. You see a lot of different things, kids with difficulties walking, kids with ataxias. The sky is the limit. And the nice thing about pediatric neurology is that it's a relatively small field. There's not a lot of us. So we almost know everybody. People are very open and very supportive, even if you're coming from a different training program. And we are aware of the fact that as much as we would like kids with very complicated movement disorders to be seen by a movement disorder specialist, for example, you don't always have that luxury. So, you reach out for them, but you continue to take care of those kids.
When you were doing your pediatric neurology training, what was the decision for you to stay a generalist and not further subspecialize?
A few reasons. As we've discussed, I'd already done a PhD. I've already done my residency training once back home, and I had to repeat it. So I felt that I was at a point where I really needed to start to be, or wanted to be, more productive and do something. And I do like the idea that I get all sorts of patients, that the diversity continues to be a good stimulation for my knowledge, for my learning, and for continuing learning, that I'm not sort of just stuck in a small bucket of things that I see over and over, but that I can see almost anything. That's probably the thing that I like the most.
Okay. Describe a typical day for you.
I will come in, I will do rounds and, see patients. We don't have admitting services, but we have consulting services. And, so if somebody needs, a UTMC, it will be mostly NICU babies, because children, for the most part, inpatient are seen at the East Tennessee Children's Hospital, which is not affiliated with UTMC. And then in clinic, I get to clinic probably anything between 10 and 11 o'clock. May do some reading, may go through a couple of journals, see if there's anything that is new that will contribute to my knowledge. And then in the afternoon, I see patients. And again, I'll go through them. At the end of the day, I normally will check the charts for the next day, make sure that, if it's a specific question for a patient, or if it's something that I'm not completely sure, or, diagnoses that I may not be familiar with because I don't see them that often, that, I'll go and look for literature and read about it. Finish my notes, and then my day is over.
How much of your day is spent in a clinic versus rounding in the hospital setting?
So I will say it's probably 50-50, part-time. Half of the time, I would say 3 to 4 hours will be in hospital. Some days, if we don't have any consults, then that morning essentially is for me to catch up with any work that I have not done, call patients, things like that. then see patients in the afternoon. That's essentially the schedule.
Do you have to take a lot of call?
Not here. I don't. I'm available on as needed basis, but I don't have to be available. At UVA, the University of Virginia, where I was up until recently, we did 1 week of call. Some of us did more weeks of the year. Some of us did less. That varies a lot. It depends on which track you are. But then the week that you're on call, you're essentially available for your residents 24/7 for the entirety of the week. But the scheme here is slightly different, just because of the type of population that I'm managing now versus what I was managing over there.
Do you feel like you have enough time for stuff outside of medicine, for family and life outside of medicine?
Yes, you do. As anything in medicine, you have to be organized at it. But I don't think that I have less time than any of my peds peers or any of the other subspecialties. I have good friends in different fields of of pediatrics, and I think that as long as you're organized, as long as you keep your priorities in terms of when you're in clinic, this is what you're doing. When you are done with clinic, this is the time that you need to do to finish your notes and things. Yes, you can. You can do it. And peds neurology is something, as I said, it's once you're comfortable with it, it's easy to get yourself into that process and still have time to do. I mean, I cook at home every day. We like outdoors, so we go out on the weekends. We don't have kids, but if I had kids, would I be able to do things with my children? Yes, absolutely.
What does the residency path and training look like to become a pediatric neurologist?
There's the classical path in which you are going to do 2 years of pediatrics and 3 years of neurology. In those 3 years of neurology, you're going to do a year of adult neurology, and then the last 2 years are pediatric neurology years. So it's a 5-year residency. Some people have joined the program or joined a program after the fact that they decided that they wanted to do pediatrics, and they finished a whole 3 years of pediatrics, and then they really liked pediatric neurology, and then those people will do an extra year. A path that is still available to some and is you can do a year of internal medicine, a year of pediatrics, and then the 3 years of neurology exactly the same way, a year of adult neurology and 2 of pediatric neurology. What that path allows is there's some residents who start as adult neurologists who really, really like pediatric neurology. So for them to be eligible to be ABPN eligible to sit for child neurology, they will have to do an extra year of pediatrics aside from the year of internal medicine that they've already done, and then there will be they'll have to do a year of child neurology, and then they're done. So it's a little bit longer. Most programs nowadays have the 5-year path. When I started, there weren't that many programs that will give you 2 years of pediatrics and 3 of pediatric neurology, or the 3 of neurology. So you essentially had to go into 2 different programs. Some pediatric programs didn't like that because then they were losing a resident when technically the resident is going to be most productive, which is in their PGY3. But most of the programs nowadays have the option to, if you match, then you'll do the 5 years as a pediatric neurology resident. You can be certified, dual certified in pediatrics and pediatric neurology if you do 2 pediatrics and 3 neurology years. But you have to make sure that you meet the criteria that the AAP has established for you to be able to sit for the PEDS boards which, I haven't followed them closely, but, there's certain amount of time of intensive care, certain amount of time of ED, certain rotations that you have to do in order to meet the criteria to be able to sit for the AAP.
Why would somebody choose to be dual boarded like that?
Some people like it because they still have a little bit of their heart in pediatrics, and they like the option of still being able to do pediatrics. Some people who, for example, will go into private practice or solo practice may want to do a little bit of pediatrics and pediatric neurology. Some hospitals, they're the less nowadays. Back then, years ago, some hospitals, which, if they're standalone children's hospitals, will ask you to be dual certified in pediatrics and pediatric neurology. When I was trying to make my decision, one of the things that my mentor told me was that, the shortage is so much that you end up not using your pediatrics board, even if you're eligible to do it, that you're going to be busy as a pediatric neurologist. And that has held truth for me, throughout this 5.5 years. I don't think that I will sit for the boards and peds. And what I hear for those who did it is that they will not sit through the recertification, because unless you are doing it on a daily basis, you're going to end up studying for a test, essentially.
You forget it.
Yeah.
Is matching into a pedi neuro residency competitive?
It is competitive, but there's plenty of opportunities. I mean, I think that pediatric neurology, to a certain extent, is kind of a well-held secret that should be out there more. I don't know, why. I think for some may have to do with the fact that it's 5 years and it sounds like a very long period of time, which it isn't. But it's a great opportunity we have. So most of the programs, some programs are, very larger programs may get 3 or 4 residents per year. Rochester, for example, had 2 residents per year, and UVA has between 1 and 2 residents per year, but most programs will get. So if you want to go into the field, you can get into a very good program with relatively, with good letters of recommendation, with like every other single program will require. But no, it's not to the point where, there's one slot and then there's 500 people fighting for it. No.
Do you see any negative bias towards DOs in the field?
Not for us. Not for pediatric neurology. As a matter of fact, I want to say at least 1 or 2 of my people who did residency with me, either above or below, had DOs. No, there's no bias. I mean, if you're good, you're good. And we don't mind how you ended up finishing med school. If you're good, we want you.
We've had a headache specialist, pediatric neurologist on before. You talked about epilepsy a little bit. What other opportunities are there to subspecialize once you're a pediatric neurologist?
Ooh, the sky's the limit. Movement disorder is something that is strongly sustained. There's a few people in the country who are, world experts. My mentor, Jonathan Mink, is one of the world experts in movement disorder. Really nice guy, down to earth. Learned a lot from him, a lot. Neuro NICU, which is something that I'm doing more here, is a field that is flourishing now. And neurocritical care kind of in conjunction with what has been happening in adult neurology, in which neurocritical care is getting kind of a special focus. You can do pediatric neuromuscular diseases, You don't have to be just an adult person to do neuromuscular. You can do that. We're recognizing more and more that younger patients do get demyelinating diseases, MS, immuno. So neuroimmunology is another field that is flourishing. As I said, epilepsy and neurophysiology is one of the oldest fields we've had. I think that, those are probably the fields where if you say, I want to do this, you can do it. Neurodegenerative diseases and white matter diseases is independent from autoimmune or neuroimmunology is also a field. Mitochondrial and genetic diseases is another field in which you can get in. So as I mentioned before, when I was interviewing and I was trying to make my decision as to what I wanted to do, do I want to stay as a Gen Peds neuro person? Do I? My mentor, Dr. Minks, had said, Denia, once you're done, you essentially can do whatever it is that you want to do. And he was right. He said, you can go wherever you want to go because we're needed everywhere. And he's been right about that because, as I said, I have a lot of friends in the field who, have gone through different paths, and they're equally successful. So it's a field that is very supportive and has a lot of opportunities.
What's one thing that you wished pediatricians knew about neuro pathologies with their children that would help their patients have better outcomes?
Well, this is going to go to probably the person who you talked with before. I think that you need to work with them on getting rid of a lot of myths regarding headaches, and because there's a lot of, we see a lot of headaches, and we see a lot of children with headaches who I'm certain that could be handled at the primary care level. So that's one area. And then probably the other thing is when do you refer a child for seizures, and when do you use your skills to reassure the parents that those seizures are not of concern. Those are probably the two things. Then if you go into other areas, then I will say, if when in doubt, grab the phone, give us a call. We're always available. Don't order tests because you're worried if you don't know how you're going to interpret the test, because then you're opening a can of worms for you and for that family that maybe didn't need to be opened.
What other specialties do you work the closest with?
Developmental peds, genetics, NICU. We do a lot of work with PM&R. And I think it's because our paths cross quite frequently.
Are there any special opportunities outside of clinical medicine for a pediatric neurologist?
Yeah, you can still go into industry if you want to. There's people who will do a lot of outreach and kind of volunteer work. I think that in the next probably 5 to 10 years, one of the fields that is going to start to develop within neurology and more so in pediatric neurology, considering the shortage, is telemedicine. I think that there's a lot of opportunity there. It's interesting because when I did my MPH in 2000, I looked into telemedicine. So to see it evolve 10, 12 years later or 17 years later is encouraging. I thought we were going to get there much faster, but we're getting there. And then what that gives you is the opportunity to still see patients, but in a different schedule. It will be great for parents who want to stay longer at home or who don't do well being in an office for a certain amount of time, because then you can provide the care from the convenience of your house. as I said, yes, industry. I've been approached before for that. There's times at which, for example, working for federal agencies, FDA does, has some groups in which pediatric neurologists can be part, and this is an ongoing discussion in terms of within the field as how can we diversify as pediatric neurologists in a way that other colleagues have, because our services are valued, and there's a lot of opportunities there for other things.
What do you know now that you wish you knew going into pediatric neurology?
I wish I knew how much the medical field was going to change, because I think that would have helped me anticipate some of the things that came as a surprise to us in terms of how the shift for measure for productivity, and it's an ongoing process, but how it's measured, and that not only touches pediatric neurology, it touches medicine as a whole. I wish I would have taken a little bit more time to do other things that I wanted to do. But that's not before going into pediatric neurology. That was before going into med school. So I try to pass that on to my students and to the residents. Is, you need to take time for yourself. I think that for me, the process of it's okay to take breaks is something that was harder to get into, and something that I've learned with time.
What do you like the most about being a pediatric neurologist?
Working with the kids. It's fulfilling to see that, sometimes they don't feel well, and they'll let you know very clearly that they don't feel well, but when they feel better, when they're starting to recover, to know that you helped and that you made a difference in the life of the child is gratifying. And that is equally gratifying for me, even if we're talking about a kid who may have physical limitations, a kid who may end up having CP, is to see how in the midst of difficulties they continue to push. They're fighters, and it's amazing to see how they never give up. Kids never give up. And that is extremely touching, and learning, that it teaches you.
What do you like the least?
What do I like the least? To deliver bad news. That's the thing that is harder for me. I think it's harder for everyone. So for years, I tried to develop within my field in terms of research to say, not only, yes, I'm delivering bad news for you, but there's people who are doing something about it, or I'm trying to make, I'm trying to be part of the change, so that we can say this is your child's diagnosis, but this is what we can offer. For a lot of the neurodegenerative diseases, you can't do that. So that's the hardest thing. That for me, that's the hardest thing, because you're changing the paradigm and the plans and the dreams a lot of times when they're younger kids that the parents had for that child, and then you have to help them walk through the process of, your child's life is going to look different than what you envisioned. But that's okay. We're here to support you. We're here to support them. Given bad news, more so when it's neurodegenerative diseases, is always hard. The one field that I don't particularly enjoy is neuro-oncology. That's a field that I don't like. So I try to stay away from it as much as I can.
Yeah. If you had to do it all over again, would you still choose PD neuro?
Oh, yeah. Absolutely.
For a student listening to this that is excited and enjoyed what you just talked about, what's the first step that a pre-med or a medical student should look at doing to get involved in PD neuro?
So for pre-med, or an undergrad, grab every opportunity that you have to observe, to shadow someone in the community. Try not to go into the hospital. The hospital has the most extreme cases, and it's not going to give you a good idea and a real perspective of what child neurology is and has for you. I think outpatient gives you way much more. And as I said, I've had throughout the years undergrads who've contacted me and say, we're interested in neurology or we're interested in neuroscience. Can I shadow? And so I think that it's a perfect opportunity to see other people doing what they do, because I want to say 99.9% of us really enjoy doing the job that we do. For med students, similarly, when you're doing your peds neurology rotation, make sure that you don't stick just to the inpatient, and make sure you go to outpatient. If you had an interesting patient as an inpatient, talk to your attending and say, or talk to your resident and say, hey, when this patient comes back, would you mind letting me know if you have the opportunity to go and see that patient? Because it gives you a completely different perspective as to, what happened inside the hospital, as to how that family, that child, either are coping with a diagnosis or are coping with an illness, or how the child recovered, right? And as I said, then you get that fulfilling part. Do your CC4 year, make sure you do a rotation, make sure you express your interest. Every single time that I have had a student who says, I'm thinking about pediatric neurology, I've tried to encourage from, I'm here. If you need anything, we can talk. If you have questions, we can talk. If we have an interesting case and you would like to write it, I'm here for you. Let's write that paper. Let's go. Let's discuss the case. So, take out as much as you can from those rotations and get a good perspective of what the field has for you, because it's broad. It's not just that narrow of the child with medication refractory epilepsy who has 10 seizures a day. That is not on daily basis what we do. That's part of what we do, and that's challenging. But there's a lot of other things that are extremely fulfilling that we also do.
All right, so there you have it. Again, that was Dr. Denia Ramirez talking about general pediatric neurology. I hope that was useful for you. I hope you get a ton of great information out of these podcasts. If you do, I'd love to hear from you. Shoot me an email, ryan@medicalschoolhq.net. Let me know that you are listening. Say hello. If there is a particular specialty that you would like to try to hear sooner rather than later, shoot me an email again, ryan@medicalschoolhq.net. And if you have anybody that you would recommend for me to interview, send them my way. I hope you have a great week. We'll see you next time here at Specialty Stories and MedEd Media.